This podcast was brought to you by Dragon Shield. Check out the affiliate link down below to help support the show.
Welcome to the Play to Win podcast, where we talk about winning in cEDH. I'm Cam.
I'm Dylan.
And we're back once again with the whiteboards because we had so much fun with them last time. And what we're going to be talking about and rating today are going to be advantage engines in cEDH.
Yes, specifically the cards that say when an opponent blah blah blah, you get to blah blah blah.
Yes.
These cards are really good in Commander, specifically in cEDH. I don't really know what else to call them besides they're just advantage pieces.
Advantage engines.
Yes.
I like the term engine because they typically will gain you consistent value throughout the game because they're all cards that let you do X when your opponent does Y.
Yeah, and these ones are specifically very good because there's only the one-time investment and they pay you back further and further as the game progresses. They're a great tempo move. They're wonderful in so many different ways, and we're going to talk about all the best ones in cEDH.
Some of them we'll find will act like stacks pieces, but others will provide more of a tempo advantage. It's just really depending on what the words on the card are and the exact kind of advantage you're getting from them, whether it be mana or cards.
Yeah, those are the two big ones. There's some other advantages you may gain, but mainly card advantage or mana advantage.
The only other thing I want to say about these is that the reason why these are so powerful is because unlike in 60 card formats, you have 3 other opponents that can all be triggering these effects to allow you to accrue this advantage. So it really helps you. And we're going to start with the list.
Period. It really helps you, period.
It really helps you.
Because of the first part.
Exactly.
Right into it. Let's begin.
All right. So the first card that we're going to talk about is going to be really one of the only commanders we're going to be talking about. So I kind of want to get that out of the way. Crom, Ludovic's Opus.
Yes, one half of Blue Farm, arguably one of the strongest commanders in our format. This card's great. It draws a lot of cards throughout the games. Every time an opponent casts a second spell, it's going to come up a lot of times. It's going to be very helpful in counter wars. It's going to be very helpful in interaction. Crom is also a 4/4 flying haste beater. We all know. We don't have to spend too much time talking about why Crom is good. It's a good card.
It's great, yeah. Sometimes if it doesn't draw you cards, it's going to act like a rule of law effect, which is preventing other people from progressing. So it's kind of a win-win for you, even if it doesn't feel like it.
The only thing that's kind of bad about Crom is that draw is necessary. So if there's like a Thassa's Oracle on the stack and you have no library, someone casts a second spell, they can force you to draw a card. That would kill you. You would die because of that. So
yeah, that's happened more than once.
Yes, kind of ironic that the best deck in cEDH has a direct, it doesn't work with the win condition.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of funny.
Well,
but
there's another card that we'll talk about that will also fuck you over in that consultation setting too. So
how are we rating these? Are we rating this on just like we're gonna rate on a scale of 1 to 10, right? 10 being the best.
And because all of these cards they kind of do different things.
Yeah.
So do we want to give them a rating on just how good of a card it is, or are we trying to rate it based on like all the advantage pieces?
I think we should rate it based on each other. Like if I could choose one of these to have on the on the play, that was going to be my 10.
Which one of these would I rather have in play?
Yes, I think that's the
average.
rating. Yeah.
Okay. On average. All right. Well, on average, I like Crom, so I think Crom is going to get a pretty high rating.
Let's give it our arbitrary numbers that will matter to no one but ourselves. I will start things off right here.
Do you have it written down already?
I have it. I'm just going to add some artistic value to it.
Me too, because mine looks really bad, so I wrote what the number is just in case you can't tell.
Very smart, very smart. Ready?
If you look at mine the wrong way, I might have to censor this.
Excellent. What does that mean? 9. Okay, you rated pretty high.
I rated it pretty high, yeah. I mean, it is half of the best deck in the format.
Yeah, that's true. That does make sense. The only reason why I rated it a little bit lower than otherwise is 5 mana is a lot for an advantage piece. It's a little bit true. It's a little different that this one's in your command zone most of the time. All the time. Never not in your command zone. It's, you know what I mean? But still, 5 mana can be kind of a lot.
That's the thing. What sucks about some of these other advantage pieces we're going to talk about is that they're not in your opening hand 100% of the time, even when you want them to be. But Crown being able to do that for me, like I just weighed that a lot.
Totally, that 100%. That makes sense. I get that.
So that means that Crom's total score is 7 + 9, which is a whopping 16.
Which also means that out of all of the advantage pieces we've talked about so far, Crom is the best one.
Well, that also means that Crom is the worst one, too.
Well, so I'm rather unfortunate. I cannot believe that. Out of this entire list, Crom is the worst advantage piece we've talked about so far.
So far, yeah. Do you want to talk about a card that's worse than Crom, or a card that's better than Crom?
Let's increase the sample size. Let's talk about one card, and we'll decide if it's better or worse in the midst of talking about it.
Okay. Let's talk about Fairy Mastermind.
Okay.
I think enough time has passed on this card where I think it's safe to say it did not break cEDH the way that a couple people might have exclaimed when it was being previewed. But
we didn't have to say what Crom did. What should we mention what this one did? I feel like there's been a couple of blue fairies that draw some amount of cards recently. Maybe since it's a podcast, I don't know.
That's probably a good idea. Yeah, for those who are driving and can't just look at your phone.
Yeah.
Don't look at your phone, please, if you're driving. Fairy Mastermind is 1 and a blue for a 2/1 creature fairy rogue with flash and flying, and it says whenever an opponent draws their second card each turn, you draw a card, and for 3 and a blue, each player draws a card. So it has a lot of text on it that's really good. And in a vacuum, like, all these abilities are excellent. It says draw cards whenever your opponent draws their second one. You don't have to commit to this on your turn. You can leave up mana drain or this, and then do this if you don't have to interact. So in theory, I really love this card. But for some reason, like, when it's in play, it's only drawing me a significantly smaller percent of cards than I would have assumed that it would have.
Interesting. Real quick, I also want to mention that this one is another one that can blow out Thassa's Oracle, although that will come up much less often. Also, is it a may? Is the draw that you draw a may, or is it a must?
No, it's a must.
It's a must. So this one, if you're doing the Thassa's Oracle and someone draws a second card, they can screw up your Thassa's Oracle.
Yeah, which is really sad because I do kind of like this in Tymna decks, just like another evasive Tymna attacker that can draw you additional cards outside of that. Kind of nice.
Yeah.
But my new thing now is 1 toughness creatures, especially 1 toughness advantage engines. I'm really souring on because of Orchestra Master now.
Yeah, it's kind of a shame that 1 card can do that, or not a shame. I shouldn't say a shame, but just that's something that happens when a powerful card like this enters the format, that we have to kind of just take a second look at some of the 1 toughness creature, and I think that's fair for this one.
Yeah, and be like, I don't need to prioritize this. Maybe there's other cards on this list that I'd rather play instead.
That being said, I think this one's been powerful. I've been playing a lot of Thrasios decks recently, and this one seems to be very good against Thrasios decks. In a advantage piece world, this card gets better and better the more Rustic Studies and Crowns and Esper Sentinels and things that we'll talk about today are in play, the better that this card gets. So I just think that's also worth noting.
I am giving this card a 6.
This one's a 5 for me.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think that's very fair. I have been medium on it, and I guess this is a little bit more than medium, but it says draw cards on it. It's better than some effects.
Yes, it's definitely playable for sure.
Speaking of Orchestra Master, do you want to go over that one next?
Yeah, that's an advantage piece.
That is an advantage piece, yeah, because it says when it enters the battlefield and whenever an opponent draws a card except for their first one on each of their draw steps, Orchestra Master deals damage to any target, and you get to amass Orcs 1. Plus, this thing has flash, so it's just busted, we've seen.
Yeah, this one doesn't give you cards, and it doesn't give you mana, but it does give you a way to end the game, which is really good. It also gives you a way to clean up the board state. It gives you advantage by removing cards that your opponents have already played and already spent mana on.
That's what I was going to say. Like, the advantage that it gets you is card advantage in the form of creature removal.
Yeah.
It has to be set up very specifically, and your opponents have to play into it. So a lot of times effects like this will just end up being a stacks piece more than anything else. But when you have a Mystic Remora, when you have a Rustic Study, it's hard to turn down that card when you have 2 and 3 toughness creatures in play. So
yeah, and the biggest thing that I like about this card is it actually ends the game. Like, it can be a win condition, which a lot of advantage pieces, that's their one fault, is they gain you that advantage, but they don't actually make you win the game. They still have to make you find the pieces and help you get to the win. But this one, eventually you're going to have a 20/20 and you're going to be able to just crash in for the win. So I like Orchestra Master a lot. It's new, but it's been super promising so far.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to give it an 8.
Ooh, I'm giving it higher than that. For me, it's a 9.5.
Wow,
this one's really, I think it's really just, I think it's an auto-includer in every black deck right now. Its ability to also just like ping stuff up when it enters. We talked about it a bunch already. It's been in a lot of games that we've played recently, and it's made, I think, a huge impact in all the games that we play it in.
So the only reason why I'm not giving this a 9, I thought really hard. I had 9.5 in my head about it too. Because this is not getting you cards, because this is not getting you mana, there are times where the advantage you're getting is kind of just like measly, for lack of a better word. I don't want to make it sound like I'm not grateful for a +1/+1 counter and a damage sometimes, but like when I'm hitting a Thrasios Bruise player in the face with the damage, just because like once a turn someone's getting the extra thing, like I don't feel, it doesn't feel as good as, well, I'm having other things that are triggering multiple times that are actually getting me farther through my deck. So
yeah, that definitely makes sense.
So that's the only reason why. But Orchestra Master is an incredible staple and something I'm very happy to see.
I think also another reason why I'm a little bit jaded on is because, like I said, I've been playing some more Thrasios decks recently, and Orchestra Master is just really good against Thrasios decks.
You can't
do your main
Thrasios,
strategy,
yeah.
and not only can you not do your main strategy, but you also can't win because if you try to draw your deck with Thrasios, Bowmaster will just kill you. So.
I know, and also check out this past Chill to Win video if you want to see a phantasmal image on an Orchestra Master. That's when this shit really pops off.
Yeah.
So. All right, so that's a total of 17.5 for Orchestra Bowmaster. Very respectable score and our best advantage engine that we've talked about so far.
I agree.
Why don't we stay within the Lord of the Rings section of the
Okay.
podcast here? And Lotho, Lutho, Lotho. So none of my
Super
three
easy.
ones were
Super
right.
easy. Lotho's a new one. I really like it a lot. It's very similar to another card that maybe we were talking about at some point today, Monologue Tax, I think.
Well, let's start off with one,
Okay.
and then we'll talk about... Actually,
Great.
no, we can do both.
I feel like we maybe... What does Lotho do?
So it says, whenever a player casts their second spell each turn, you lose a life and create a treasure token. Now, this effect is on a black and a white 2/1 legendary halfling rogue.
One thing I really want to make sure that we emphasize is whenever a player,
Yes.
you can trigger this yourself, which is not true for many advantage pieces.
Can't do that with Crom.
Yeah, many of the stuff that we're talking about today, you can't do anything to help trigger yourself. This one, you can actually build your mana on the things that you play. Lotho is just, for that efficient rate of just 2 mana, this is such an efficient mana engine, I think.
It really is. It reads kind of innocuous. And, like, you lose a life, too. I don't know if I
Right.
want to do that.
Who cares?
But, yeah, it really is a big who cares scenario.
Yeah, a lot of times this is going to, I feel like, make you 2 to 3 treasures per turn, sometimes more than that, sometimes less, sometimes it'll just make you 1, but it's almost always going to make you 1, and at that rate, it's similar to like an Arcane Signet that can have boosted versatility. That's definitely something that I'm willing to play. Like an Arcane Signet with way upside is really good.
If this thing can essentially be free and threaten to draw me a card with Tymna, I'm already happy. So with that being the floor, I think it's already pretty good. That being said, I don't think it's the best card that we got from Lord of the Rings for cEDH, like I think a lot of people think, but it's still a very helpful piece here.
Yeah, definitely it's better than was originally projected to be, but I think as we've seen it, I still like cards like Orchestra Master and the Ring a little bit more.
Yeah, me too.
The One Ring. Is that on our list? Are we talking about that?
No, because that one doesn't have any, if your opponent does this, then do this.
I guess that's true. It feels like it's in the same vein.
The One Ring is an advantage piece, but our advantage engines that we're specifically focusing on are this. If we were talking about all advantage engines, then Ragavan would be back on the list, I
Yeah,
would say,
that's
because
true.
it does help you see some additional cards and get you
These
more
are
mana.
specifically when an opponent does the thing that you
Yes.
get the reward. That's what we're talking about today. So we won't be talking about the One Ring.
Or Ragavan.
Right.
Cool.
I gave this one a 6.5.
I gave this one a 7.
What card? We're talking about Lotho, right?
We're
Yeah.
talking about Lotho.
Yeah, a 6.5. I gave Crom a 7, I think, and I think Lotho's a little bit worse than Crom, but Lotho's still very good. I like cards more than I like Treasure, and I can use Druid Lotus to cast Crom. So that's why I give it a 6.5.
I had to do math in my head, and it was really hard. All right, and you wanted to talk about Monologue Tax because it does something very similar.
It does something similar to Lotho. It is 1 additional mana worse. It is
and in fewer colors, though.
fewer colors better. It is an enchantment, both worse and better. It is a little bit harder to kill, but it doesn't get any of the bonuses of being a creature will get you in the typical Tymna style decks.
And it's harder, it's easier, actually, to counter, so that's also a downside.
That's probably true. Another issue with it is it doesn't trigger off of yourself. That is an issue.
That is the biggest downside.
The card is close, but I'm most often not quite good enough. But I just think it's worth talking about because it does like a similar thing to Lotho.
Yeah, with no downside technically, but the downside is that you can't there's so much more downside.
Downside is that
technically.
it stinks.
Yeah, it's not written on the card that make it super obvious, but it plays very obvious. then.
Yeah, it's a little bit underrated, and for that reason, I give it a measly 2. There needs to be a floor to know how good the ceiling is. You know what I'm saying?
I'm gonna give it a 1.
Not bad.
Really, because I didn't erase my 7 and I needed to turn it into something low.
And low color decks, this card is probably fine. In casual, this card is awesome. I don't like it.
I do think this is a good casual card.
Yeah.
Because it's one of those things that everyone's going to feed. No one cares in casual.
Oh, yeah. Most of these cards I think are normally great in casual. I don't play them a lot because
I don't play like any of these in casual.
yeah, they're just too generically good. They don't ever fit a theme, and I play them so often in cEDH.
that I don't need to play them in casual.
Right,
Go
but-
watch our casual podcast if you want to learn more about how we play casual.
Yeah, although I've changed my opinion on this since then. I don't do combos in casual anymore. I've changed how I view it. my world will have to do an update at some point because my worldview has been rocked.
We will. Maybe we'll do like a yearly check-in on where we're at with our casual thing.
Great idea, Cameron. Let's write that down.
Speaking of casual,
Give it to me.
we're going to talk about a card that I really only see there.
Okay.
Burgeoning,
yes.
Burgeoning. What a bonkers casual card.
I love this card in my casual AC deck.
Yeah.
This card is phenomenal.
Real quick, in cEDH, it gets a 0.
You give it a 0.
But in casual, it gets like an 8 or some shit.
I think I probably almost agree with that. I want to talk about this one just because it is another when an opponent does X, you get to Y, which is, I think, pretty cool. This one I think is kind of underrated. Most cEDH decks are running less than 30 lands now, so it's just very rare that you're going to have another land. But if you're playing a bunch of these effects, you're going to end up with more cards in hand than you want. Maybe Burgeoning is helpful alongside of a Rustic Study. I don't know. Kind of in my head, in this theory of this like heavy land Tatiova style cEDH deck, something like Burgeoning could be really good.
So not only,
Outside
though,
of that.
do you need to be playing 35 plus lands for Burgeoning to make the slightest amount of sense, I think, but your opponents also have to be playing lands consistently.
Yeah.
So that works great in cEDH on turn 1 and turn 2, and then after that, there's a lot of decks that start to get stuck because they're playing more mana rock, so they're not too worried about their land count. So I think it's relying on you making your deck probably a little bit worse, depending on what your strategy is in a cEDH environment, and not being able to maximize on its ceiling at the same time.
Yeah, here's my thought on it not being good in the late game. If this thing triggers twice, it's Soul Ring. If this thing for 1 mana ramps you 2 ahead.
Well, yes and no, because you were going to get that mana anyway, and
But
then
it speeds you up, yeah.
it technically fizzles away, whereas Soul Ring would have stuck
Continues.
around and continued to make you 2 more mana than you were getting.
Fair.
So I would say yes, but the answer is no.
Right.
Well, yes, but actually no.
I'm gonna give it a 1 because I have a hope and a dream. Although I don't see it in cEDH, I think it could see more play.
What's your casual rating for it?
Like a fucking 10 in the right deck. In AC, the card is unstoppable. It's like one of the best cards in the deck.
I'll pick this land back up and I'll put it back down,
Right,
and then I'll
yeah.
pick it back up and then I'll put it back down.
Yeah, it's so good, especially with the bounce lands and stuff.
Yeah.
It can be really, really broken. If you're playing, I'm playing 44 lands in that deck. Like, it's just going to trigger all the time. But in cEDH, not as much.
44 forests, 44 islands, 44.
I want to go up to 55 lands just so I can say that. 55 lands! That's the name of the deck.
It's just 55 lands. Oh man.
All right, let's move on to a better card, maybe.
All right, let's talk about one of the best cards in all of EDH and cEDH, Rustic Study.
Oh, I know what I'm giving it immediately.
Yeah, me too. If you didn't give this card a 10,
It's a 10.
you've never played a game of Commander, in which I'd highly recommend playing because it's
How
a
are you,
fun
why are
game.
you listening to this
Yeah,
podcast?
why
How did you get here?
Yeah, Mom, please try out the game.
Rustic Study is great. It is, what's the term? It's what all of these attempt to be. It's
It
the
is
best
the
one.
quintessential.
Quintessential is a great word. It's the original, in my opinion. It is the card that does this the best, that they've tried to recreate 1,000 different ways and doesn't get there. The reason why it's the best is because 3 mana for this rate is really, really good.
There are 3 opponents that you have as well, so there's 3 people that are triggering it on every single spell that they cast.
It triggers on every spell. That's what I was going to say, but you said it.
Sorry.
Fuck!
Yeah, well, it's not like they didn't know that. It's Rustic fucking Study.
Yeah, we don't need to explain what it does. The card's
Should I
good.
read it?
It stays forever. It draws you a ton of cards. If anyone gets lazy, it's the best card in the world. Otherwise, it taxes them, which is also good. The card's really powerful. 10. Yeah, 10.
10. Definitely a 10, yeah. Well, while we're on the subject, we're just going to talk about Mystic Remora.
Yeah, this one, I go back and forth on if this is as good or better than Rustic Study. It really depends on the meta.
On the day, really.
And
how
the
I
day.
feel and what turn I'm on, and...
I'm going to give it a 9.9.
9.5
9.5
for me. Yeah,
okay.
shit. Hold
this
up.
is just under Rustic Study because sometimes this can do nothing. Your opponents can wait this out. If you're playing against a Najeela and a Sylvala and another creature deck, they can say, hey, everyone, I'm good to just play Mana Dorks in these first couple turns. Everyone agrees. And then you just spend 6 mana over the course of your turns to do nothing. That can be really bad. Rustic Study will almost never be really bad like that.
Did you mention you have to... I zoned out for a second because I was trying to do math again in my head and make sure that 19.4 is the final score.
No, that's totally fine. Do you have a calculator?
Did you... well, yeah, there's one on my phone. There's one on my laptop. I have
Maybe
6
just
at
have
my
it out.
disposal.
We can just have it out.
I already have to type the numbers that they end up being, and then I'm...
It's type it twice then. That's exhausting. Yeah, never mind.
Yeah, it's actually like 3 times the numbers that I have to type in then. Yeah.
Don't do that. Just guess what
So
the numbers
did you talk about how Mystic Remora also you have to pay for it all the time?
Yeah, it doesn't stick
turn?
around. It can be played around. Your opponents can play around it. They can just all your creature opponent decks can decide we're just gonna play Mana Dorks instead, not do anything.
So I have nothing to add. You said it all.
I think I said a decent amount.
All right, yeah, 19.4 is the final score for Mystic Remora. And we're going to stay on the subject of Mystic Buddies and the fish stick.
Right.
We're going to talk about Percent Null next.
Great transition. Love it. This is very comparable to Mystic Study, Mystic Remora, and Rustic Study.
Mystic Remora.
Pros of this one: it can be found off Ranger Captain of Eos, which is a very common play pattern. You can
They're stapled together.
Check our most recent gameplay with Baby Jeebus and Mike from Playing with Power, where this happened. It happens in a ton of games. Ranger Captain is your protection. Percent Null is some card advantage to help get you there. It doesn't trigger quite as much as some of the others. It can be played around because your opponent can pay for it, and they can just not. It's easily more played around. But the fact that this one is just 1 mana, never goes away, can trigger off Tymna. Percent Null is so good.
Yeah, we kind of forgot to keep up with the card rating here, but yeah, what it specifically says is when your opponent casts their first non-creature spell of each turn, you get to draw that card. So when you were talking about playing around it, that's what that is. You just play out your Mana Crypt, you pay for it, and then now the rest of your turn is unlocked. Who cares about it? It does have kind of the best of both worlds with Rustic Study and Mystic Remora, because you can play around it like Mystic Remora, but it sticks around without an upkeep cost like Rustic Study. So, like I said, kind of the best of both worlds.
I give this one an 8.5. Really
8.5?
solid. I think it's a cEDH staple. Almost all white decks are going to be interested in trying it out. I think it's a great card.
I'm giving it a 9, and I think I'm going a little bit higher just because I'm considering the fact that this is a white card doing this, that this really kind of pushes the cEDH meta in a better direction. Like, because white has access to this, the format's just better because now more decks can keep up with the advantage that other colors like blue get.
100%. This in non-blue decks is a much bigger upgrade than it is in blue decks because white doesn't have this effect. So yes.
You give it an 8.5?
I give it an 8.5.
So that's a 17.5 to total for that.
Excellent. That sounds about right.
What card do you want to talk about next?
You got the list. You tell me.
Pick a number 1 through 7.
7?
That's the number you picked?
That is it.
Let's talk about Smuggler Share.
Smuggler Share. This card stinks. What does it do?
I was just going to look it up because I don't remember everything that it does. This is 2 and a white for an enchantment that says at the beginning of each end step, draw a card for each opponent who drew 2 or more cards this turn, then create a treasure for each opponent who had 2 or more lands ETB under their control this turn.
This one's really good. I just think spots are stretched thin, and it's hard to find room for a card like this when there are just so many powerful cards in cEDH. I really like this. I want it to see play, but I always just end up cutting it. It's normally like my 104th card that I have to just start trimming down when I need a 99.
Again, I think this is one I could give like a separate casual grade to.
Definitely.
Because this is one that, it's the land thing for me that like in casual, that's going to happen so much more. But the only time that you're going to have someone have 2 or more lands enter the battlefield is if they have a fetch land, and that is not high enough for me to warrant playing like the second half of this card in the hopes that I get a treasure.
Right, yeah. It's just 3 mana for this unpredictability is not really where I want to be. This type of effect I want on a 2 mana creature with a body, which there are some that do very similar things to this. The 3 mana making it to be able to do both, I just haven't found worth it yet.
It also really sucks that you don't get the card right away.
Yes.
Like, you have to wait
That's
until
true.
the end step. All these other cards we're talking about, you get the card the second something hits the stack, so you have a chance to draw into a counter and prevent something from winning the game. This card can't do that.
Honestly, that's a very good point. A main reason why a lot of these cards are so good is they help you in the stack. They help you as the stack is increasing. They help you on the stack. That's where cEDH's most important moments are. And this one just says, I can't help you now, but I'll get you at the end. You're like, I'll be dead then. I need it now. I don't want it at the end step.
It's like when your friend shows up to the airport 45 minutes late.
Yeah, that's not helpful. I'm already in the Uber. Go home.
Yeah, all right. So because this is a cEDH list, I'm giving this card a 1.
I gave it something really high. I'm going to give it a 2.5.
A 2.5?
Yeah, just because I think it's close, but I still, anything under like a 4 is like unplayable to me.
That's kind of the thing, right? Like, I don't know where I would see this, so anything...
Right. Might as well be a fucking 0.
Yeah. You're not wrong. All right, let's talk about some good cards.
Yes.
Let's talk about Notion Thief.
Oh, yeah. This is another 1 toughness creature that has been less on my radar recently because of the dreaded Orchestra Master.
Yeah, so this one is another flash creature. It's a 3/1 for 2, a blue and a black. And this one says whenever an opponent draws a card that's not the first that they draw for turn on their draw step, instead you draw that card.
I think this one was also kind of one of the first of its kind. There were a lot of repeat offenders that are similar Notion Thief copycats. There was, what's his name that got banned?
There was Alms Collector, which is a
there's
cat.
Alms Collector.
That's not the one you were thinking of. You were thinking of Hull Breacher, which
Hull Breacher
prevents the draw and makes you treasures. There's Narset, who just prevents most of the draws.
Except for the first one.
Yeah.
Notion Thief is great. I like to think of it as a soft win condition. Your opponents effectively have to stop it, but it doesn't lose you the game. So you can kind of like force removal and interaction out of your opponent's hand for it.
Notion Thief and Windfall is basically Thassa's Oracle Demonic Consultation.
Effectively, I consider that one a win. The issue with it is it's fragile. It's only 1 toughness. It can be really used against you. It can be Gilded Drake. Consecrated Sphinx can fuck you up. I have found that issue over and over with Notion Thief is it's just used against me, and I don't really love that about cards in cEDH. I don't want my cards to be used against me. I want them to be all powerful. But yeah, at one point this was one of the pinnacles, I think. Lately, I read a little bit less.
All right, so I think it's going to make the rating for this card very interesting because, again, I'm much lower on Notion Thief right now because of the prominence of Orcish Bowmaster. And honestly, I don't know what it would take for like that to flip-flop. As long as Bowmaster's in the format, I'm going to play Notion Thief less.
Yeah, I get that.
That being said, it's awesome.
6.9 for me.
And a 7 for me.
Basically the same.
The
ceiling is just too high. Like what it can do, not many of these other stacks pieces, not many of these other advantage pieces can like win you the game in combination with another card.
See,
this one can.
The problem with Bowmaster is you wheel, you deal 21 damage, and then another 2 players are still alive, and then you have to win, but they still have cards in hand.
Right.
You drew 28 cards after your Notion Thief wheel, and nobody has cards in their hand.
Right, yeah. It's so easy. It's so difficult to lose from that situation unless you're already like just dead on board. That the ceiling is just, like I said, too high.
Yeah, 13.9 for Notion Thief I think is a very fair rating there. While we're on the subject of wheel payoffs, Smothering Tithe is also a wheel payoff, but instead of you getting the cards, this time it's on a 4-mana enchantment that says whenever your opponent draws a card, if they don't pay 2 mana, you get a treasure.
Yeah, this one doesn't get you the cards, which makes it a little bit less with the wheels. It doesn't actually win you the game, but it gets you so many treasures if you get a wheel off with this one. I like that it can be exploitable with cards like Wheel of Fortune. It also effectively, although it's 4 mana, it basically pays for itself. If you get it out early enough, opponents are not going to be able to pay for it, and you're going to get those treasures right back very soon. I like Smothering Tithe a lot more recently. I've been playing it a lot. I've been kind of like mulliganing aggressively to find it in some of like my Atraxa lists and stuff like that, and it's super helpful. You can go down super low and with an early Smothering Tithe really get back into the game.
It is kind of funny how your 2 main decks that I've been seeing you play mostly now have been like very prominent Smothering Tithe decks. Like Atraxa, like you mentioned, big fucking expensive commander you need to get in play. Timna Jessica, 23 fucking lands and a lot of rituals, so you really want to get this in play to help you get mana advantage there. So it is, I have been very impressed with it in your decks there, but I don't just like throwing this into decks as like a mana advantage piece, just as an advantage piece. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get that.
I need to build around it a little bit more specifically, like in those decks.
Yeah, it has the Lotho issue is it doesn't actually stop your opponent from doing anything, and it doesn't give you any real additional resources. Like, it gives you the treasure, but it doesn't give you any more information. It doesn't actually help you on the stack unless to cast the spell that you already have in your hand. Like,
but it will be the reason why you win games, though. Just like because it gives you the mana to do everything that you need to do in conjunction with one of these other card draw engines, it's like an unstoppable pairing that you have.
I give it an 8.
Yeah, I'm gonna change this. This says 6.5, not 5.5.
Yeah.
That says 6.5.
The fact that you can use it as a soft win condition and abuse it with wheels, I think makes it a lot stronger than some of the other ones because it's not just what it is, it's also so much more.
It's funny that it did better than Notion Thief.
Weird.
We have it doing better than Notion Thief, which I don't.
I
rated Notion Thief a little bit
Thief.
low because
you know what? I got to change mine because this is not better than Notion Thief.
It's
Maybe it is
6 points above Notion Thief on our list.
Weirdly,
right now,
I do like it more than Notion Thief.
I rated it lower than Notion Thief, but you rated it higher enough that it bumped it up by 0.6 points above Notion Thief.
I probably gave it too high, but whatever. I already locked it in. That's
what
I was feeling.
If we still have 90% of our list be super fucking accurate all the time, I think it's fine if we have one card that's
and they're always
maybe a little
accurate,
off.
so they've never been wrong besides this.
I don't know. The best 3-color one might have been a little wrong, but
Most of them are pretty wrong. Honestly, looking back, I'm like, man, I don't agree with any of this shit.
really, I watch the podcast and I go, I'm really fucking smart. I don't know what about this gives me any kind of confidence, but
It's the microphone, I think.
that's what it is. Yeah, it's fake. What's the opposite of imposter syndrome?
You think you're way better than you are? Like ego.
Like, I know I should be here.
Overconfidence.
I don't have that. I don't have that at all.
Anyone who does YouTube has to have a little bit of that.
You have to have a little bit of
be here.
narcissism. Yeah.
Well, who are we to decide we should be making videos about this?
There's no other reason why I could listen to the two of us talk to each other for an hour and edit that over the course of a week.
What is the opposite of imposter syndrome? Because that is what we have.
We kind of have that a little bit. We've been performers like our whole fucking life with music. And oh my God. All right, we have a couple more of these.
Let's get through them.
All right, let's talk about Ledger Shredder.
I like this card.
Yo, I've been higher on this card a little bit more recently. I just really like it in Underworld Breach decks. I like the card selection aspect. Even though I'm not getting true card advantage, you're still seeing the cards. So on top of seeing more cards, getting to sculpt the hand that you need, and getting an aggressively larger flying beater for your Tymna deck or to protect you from a Tymna deck, like that's all stuff that I'm into.
Yeah, you said it all. I like a lot of things about this card. The one thing that I don't like about it is it doesn't actually give you advantage. You have to find the Underworld Breach to use with it in order to gain that advantage, or otherwise you're just kind of looting through, which is good. Card selection is nice, but doesn't get you ahead. And for that reason, I think I rate it a little bit lower than some other ones.
That's fair.
Are you ready?
Wow, yeah, you do rate it lower than some of the other ones.
5.5 for me.
Give it an 8.
Yeah.
Yeah.
5.5.
I think you're just wrong.
I might
This
be.
is like one of the first times I'm ever like, I think you're just wrong.
I like the other one, the fairy that draws you a card straight up when an opponent draws a second card.
See, now
I like
I'm
that one
actually,
more.
I thought I was going to, and then they printed Orchestra Master, and I totally flip-flopped.
You know what? Yeah.
And now I'm like way more on,
Yeah.
I'd much rather have Ledger Shredder, something that's going to survive, something that like after one pump, I can survive Lightning Bolt and Abrade all of a sudden now too.
Yeah, that
Like,
makes
it
sense.
can block Crom at a certain point. Like,
You do have
I don't know.
orcish sunglasses on right now, which I think is a fair spot to be on. Like I'm not saying that's wrong to have.
I let Opposition Agent blow me out way too much early on. I'm not letting Orchestra Master do the same thing to me.
Okay, fair enough.
All right, let's talk about Dothi Voidwalker and kind of like go through some of these other black stacks creatures
Yeah,
here.
the Black Stacks creatures that we've been getting recently have been fucking all-stars. There's such a huge tempo advantage, and Dothi is a prime example of that. Not only does it, whenever your opponent casts a spell, it goes into exile rather than graveyard. That in itself is an advantage for you. It's just disadvantage for your opponents because they can't
Stacks.
use your graveyard. But what it is an advantage for you is it gives you an additional selection of one extra card that you can have from any of the cards that they fucking play.
You just get to flip through this spell book like you're at a fucking tattoo parlor and
Yeah.
go, oh, I want this one.
Not only that, but you don't have to pay the mana for it. If someone dares try to cast an ad nauseam and it doesn't resolve, or even if it does, you get to cast that ad nauseam afterwards.
And honestly, they will cast ad nauseam. Like,
Yeah.
there's so many of these other cards. People are like, don't feed Mystic Remora. Make sure you pay for Percent Null. Nobody goes, hey, you better not give him mana drain underneath his Dothi Voidwalker because he's going to win next turn.
It's hard to track. It's hard to remember all the things that are under that Dothi too. Even if you announce all your triggers, a lot of times it's staying there throughout the game, and it can be hard to remember. Not only that, it has Shadow. You can get through for damage with Tymna and other things. We don't have to talk about that on all the creatures that are evasive, but just like an extra bonus to this card. Although I have found it's almost always correct. Just don't attack with the Dothi. Leave it available.
Leave it available,
It's just better to have it available more often than not, unless you really need that card. I like Dothi a lot, though.
There's a card from Hearthstone when I played that this card always reminds me of. It was like this 4-mana creature that when it died, you got a random creature from the game. And that's always what this card kind of has reminded me of. It's just a really good creature in play that does something really good. And then when it dies, it's going to get you something else in that case, like another spell.
Definitely. I give it a 9.
I give it a 9.5.
Yeah.
When I'm mulliganing and I see that I can play this on turn 1 in my opening hand, I'm like, fuck yeah, I'm doing this. So
The effect that it stops your opponents from doing things, like straight up stops, doesn't give them the option like Rustic Study does. It exiles the card. It does the effect. Your opponents can't pay to not have the card, not
Yeah.
exile. You know what I mean? For that reason, it's really good.
yeah, I absolutely love Dothi Voidwalker. All right, Nizzle Hall is our next one.
This one's a big one. Tyler would be remiss if we did not talk about it. Did I use that word right? I'm not sure. He would be a little bit upset if we didn't talk about Nizzle Hall.
He would be Amos.
A miss.
He would miss
He would
Nizzle Hall if we didn't talk about Nizzle Hall.
Nizzle Hall is a card that Kinnan can flip into a lot of the times. It is like the better Rustic Study. Your opponents can't pay for it. You just straight up draw the card.
It's a Rustic Study that can protect itself,
Exactly.
too.
Yeah, you can discard some of the extra cards that you've drawn to exile until end of turn and bring it back. Nizzle Hall doesn't see play in many decks, but in Kinnan that can flip into it, it's great. And so for that reason, I think we should talk about it because it's an untaxable version of that Rustic Study. The effect itself is very, very powerful.
I'm giving it a 3 because Kinnan and like very niche decks like that are really the only places that it sees play. But when it comes down, like, I don't know how I can win those games.
Right. I give it a 4. It just, the games that it does get into play, and I've seen it a ton with Tyler, it just takes over so quickly.
Oh, definitely.
But really only in that one deck.
So we have 4 more cards we're going to talk about now.
Okay, give them to me.
We're going to start off our final 4 with Consecrated Sphinx.
Another one.
Another Tyler card.
This is another Kinnan card, basically. Just sees play in that deck. I've seen a couple Reanimator lists play it as something that they can reanimate quickly when there is not a way to win the game, but you just want advantage and to grind through. I think it's fine for that. Unfortunately, it's too much mana to see play in every deck, so it has to be a very specific reason.
This is so funny. See, I'm giving this one a 4.
I'm giving it a 3. It's basically the same as Nizzle Hall.
I like that it's cheaper and that your opponents are forced to draw a card on all their turns, so it's not like they can technically play around it.
Honestly, I think you're probably right. Now that I'm comparing them directly in my head, I think I like Consecrated Sphinx a little bit more. And it even sees play in more decks. You know what? I'm going to give it a 4. I'm changing mine. You're right. It's a 4. I'm going to give it a 4. I'm going to end it
on an 8.
I'm going to give it a 4.1 though, because I do think it's better than Nizzle Hall.
8.1.
Yeah.
We will give Nizzle Hall. So now, or Consecrated Sphinx.
Right. Yeah. It sees play in a little bit more decks, and it's just a little bit better. If you untap with it, you're guaranteed like 6 cards, which is great.
And then you're winning that game.
Yeah,
that was
definitely.
like you build your own ad-nause that way. Yeah, with 1 card. Wandering Archaic.
This one is a dud, I think.
This is a huge dud.
Although, if you watch one of our recent Chiltwin videos with Baby Jeebus, I completely forget that I thought I have enough mana. I'm not going to spoil it, but this card really, it fucking gets me.
It's actually this Chill to Win video that just went up this week.
That just happened.
The second time that we're talking about it.
It was a cool game.
Which, how you know, it's 2 hours.
Yeah, it's a long game.
It's such an awesome game. You got to check it out if you haven't. But what Wandering Archaic does in that game is exactly what Wandering Archaic does in cEDH. When you forget about it, man, is that devastating.
Yeah.
And when you remember it, it does jack shit. And you spent 5 mana on nothing.
Yes, that is the issue with it, is it can be played around. People can wait. People are going to wait. They basically have to wait. A lot of times they have to think of it as a hard stacks piece because all of your counter spells basically don't work. All of your ad nauseams, basically, your win conditions, like it becomes so much harder to do a lot of stuff.
Don't overload a Cyclonic Rift.
Right. But the issue is people are just going to wait until they find removal, and it'll just act as a stacks piece, and all the reasons that you just said. 5 mana for it to be nothing can be frustrating sometimes.
Yeah, so I'm going to give it a 4. I'm pretty down on this. I'm actually probably being really generous.
2.9.
Yeah, I think I'm being generous.
2.9. I don't like this one, but we've talked about worse cards.
Did you purposefully give it a 2.9 so it would end on a 6.9?
No, but that's nice.
Nice. All right, let's talk about the one that kind of breaks the rule before we talk about a banger for our final one here.
Give it to me.
Opposition Agent.
Oh, yeah, I think this one counts.
Yeah, because this one does count, because it's whenever an opponent searches, you get a card from their library instead.
If Dothi counts, this counts. This has a similar thing to what I was talking about the Wandering Archaic, because it's just often it's going to do nothing because everyone's just not going to tutor because it's so devastating to get caught in a tutor with Opposition Agent.
So it's a little bit different than Dothi in that way because like
Right.
people will still get their card that they put into exile, which is, I guess, why they don't feel so bad about it. But when you just don't get the card that you're tutoring for or the land that you're searching for,
It just doesn't work. It doesn't do anything.
You're fucked.
Yeah, the different part is that this has flash. You can get them at least once, and then it's a pretty close to a hard stacks piece after that. Still an advantage piece, I think, because your opponents lose something whenever they do something, and you gain a free thing because of it. Sometimes you'll get a couple of fetch lands, and I don't know. It can be good.
yeah, and I just tend to play decks that fall to this card.
I don't know why I'm saying it can be good. Like, you don't know Opposition Agent is a good card. Like, no shit.
It could be good.
It could be
yeah.
good. It could be bad.
Could be
I don't
good.
know.
Man, I don't know how cEDH goes.
I'm gonna-
9.5.
What'd you give it? I'm going to give it an 8.9.
Man, with the fucking math you're making me do. Oh, my God.
I'd say 8.5. It's 8.5. I ain't change it.
No, it can be an 8.9. 8.9 plus 9.5. Unless you really don't want it to be an 8.9.
It's an 8.9.
Okay. That's an 18.4 that it will get then.
Great. That makes sense.
Yeah, that card, I don't know if we have to say anything else about Opposition Agent. That's another card
Pretty
that we
close
talk
to staple
about
for me.
every week on the podcast. So if you want to hear more about it, just go click on some other podcast.
Yeah, and I think Orchestra Master, Dothi Voidwalker, and Opposition Agent have become like the three
amigos.
The three amigos. They're my three go-tos whenever I play black deck. I'm like, all right, let me start off with these three cards.
Yeah.
And then go from there.
Exactly. Yeah, me too. Our final card we're going to talk about.
Give it to me.
What do you think it is?
I don't know. We talked about a lot of the big ones.
Yeah. There's another one.
I don't know.
That's the first letter that it starts with.
You or I?
A. Archivist of Agma.
Archivist of Agma. Sure. Yeah, this is a new one. I think Archivist has been really great.
I think so too. Yeah. It's got a Opposition Agent vibe because of the search their library thing, but you gain life and draw a card from your deck instead of preventing the search.
My issue with this one is it competes with Opposition Agent and Avid Mind Sensor because you're just going to want to search their library
and
less.
it non-bows with them pretty much.
Yeah, exactly.
Always.
It's not great with those cards, other cards you want to be playing, but if you don't want to be leaning into those Staxy type cards, you just want a little extra card advantage. Maybe you were playing Dark Confidant before. I think this card will end up being better than Dark Confidant in Commander. Unfortunately, I love Dark Confidant forever, but this one is just going to draw you probably the same amount of cards, except it'll gain you life instead of losing you life, which is kind of helpful.
And you don't need to commit it. Like these advantage pieces that you don't need to commit and tap out for, I just think have so much more value that way too.
You can hold, there's someone's going to try to win every game, every turn, all the time. So if you can hold up interaction and last minute when they don't, all right, now I'll put in the advantage when it's safe. That can be way better.
I don't want to play the game where nobody's trying to win.
Yeah.
Oh, God. Archivist of Agma, though, has turned out to be one of my favorite cards from, 2022? Just like of all time, in all of 2022. So
you think it came out in that year, 2022? Yeah, I think that probably sounds right.
It's so hard to keep. All right, I have a question for you.
Give it to me.
What was the last standard set? Was it... is it still March of the Machines Aftermath and March of the Machines?
Yes, it was.
Okay.
Maybe it was just one of those. No, it was both of them.
Lord of the Rings makes it seem
Not a
like that
standard
was
set.
so fucking long ago.
That was a long time ago. There was no core set this summer, I don't think,
because they did the Lord of the Rings set, so which is kind of funny. No core set, so we skip a standard set, but nobody plays standard anyway. So
I would like to play more standard. If
like to play
Fairies is
more
good in
standard.
standard, I think it might make standard fun.
What is more? 0 times any number is still 0.
What do you mean?
You play 0 standard now.
Yeah, I would like to play more.
Oh, plus, don't multiply.
Yeah,
just
I'm not.
plus.
Yeah, just plussing.
I know, but my joke didn't work.
7.5.
Oh my God, what card are we talking about? Archivist of Agma. 7.5.
7.5 for me. Probably a little bit high. To be honest, I don't love the card.
I'm giving it a 7.
Wow. You love the card and I don't love the card. We're way off on this.
I do love the card.
I'm changing mine to 7.
I just typed in 0.5.
Take it back.
All right, yeah, 7's all the way around. It's a total of 14.
Card's fine. I don't include it all the time, though.
It's fine, and I don't include it all the time. But when my commander does not give me card advantage, it is in my deck 100% of the time, no matter how many opposition and anti-search cards I'm playing. Stranglehold, Shadow of Doubt.
I miss Stranglehold.
You miss it?
Yeah, I miss it.
It's so bad now. Do you want to rate Stranglehold real quick?
1.
I give it a 1. Yeah, that's our full list. I didn't miss any.
I love these cards. These cards, I think, define cEDH. They're such a core part of the game now, especially recently. I think they add so much fun, too. They make the game continuing, and they make the stacks extra explosive. Should we talk about which ones are the best ones? These ratings?
Let's
Should we
figure them out, yeah.
Figure out that top 10?
I'm curious to, I want to go back to our second podcast when we talked about the best creatures, and I want to see how many of them are in, the same order on that list as they are 8 months later on this list now.
Yeah, probably different. I mean, our opinions change. We even talked about how Orchestra Master changes our opinions in some of these.
That's true. Yeah, that wasn't around back then. And now for the top 10 advantage cards in cEDH. We will begin the list with number 10 at Notion Thief, coming in with a total of 13.9 points. Archivist of Agma is the number 9 advantage piece, coming in with a total of 14 points. Barely eking out Notion Thief. Smothering Tithe at number 8 at 14.5. I think that's wrong, but that's all you. Our number 7 is Crom, Ludwig's Opus, coming in at 16 points. Our number 5... Our number 6 is Orchestra Master, coming in at 17.5 points. Our number 5 is Esper Sentinel, coming in at 17.5 points. Our number 4 is Opposition Agent, coming in at 18.4 points. Our number 3 is Dothi Voidwalker, barely eking out the Agent at 18.5 points. Mystic Remora is number 2 at 19.4. And our only perfect score of the day, our number 1 card advantage engine, Rustic Study, with a perfect 20.
Best card in cEDH.
Got that fucking shit right.
Thank you so much for watching or listening. If you'd like to support us directly, you can do so on Patreon, like our $100 patrons.
Joey Aarons, SoulCal Acura, Stormageddon, Cool Bean Man, Luke Cook, AJ Albosabi, Demon of Rosgrees, Kawaja A. Hamid, Lauren Connell, and Baby G-Bus.
If you want to pick up any of our merch, you can do that at playtowinmtg.com.
Thank you so much, Dragon Shield, for supporting the show. Make sure you use our affiliate link in the description to pick up all of your Dragon Shield needs.
Follow us on TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram for more content.
Thank you so much for watching.
See you next time.
The $50 patrons are as follows: Saison MTG, Dalton Poteet, Kadanis, Stashes, Mitchell Shepard, Justin, Man Solo, Nikola Marikovic, Stephen Schlifty, Pedro, C, Jacob Depp, Michael Ballou, Jan Wildfang, Thomas Bueno, Swampy McGee, David Nelson, and Jormax.